Tears are a very powerful human expression. As the people of the Mid-Atlantic and New England states recover from Superstorm Sandy, you can bet that people will continue to shed tears as the small business owner cleans out her flooded restaurant, and as the man cleans out his house damaged by the storm. There will be moments of tears and pain. The families of the 180 people that have been killed in the U.S. and in other countries in the world will certainly shed tears and will continue to do so. And yet, those are not the only tears that will be shed. I think of James and Mildred, both in their early 80s, and they live in all places of Lufkin, Texas. I'd never heard of that place before until I met them. When they aren't enjoying their retired life in East Texas, they have spent their lives working to clean up after disasters. It wouldn't surprise me, in fact, if they were already on their way, or if they were already there, somewhere along the East Coast, helping people to recover. They do this through their church. And while they're not Lutheran, they know and they speak highly of Lutheran disaster response. It seemed like every time that I would talk with them, they would tell some sort of story of the way that the Lutherans, as they said it, were so involved there and helping in significant ways. And I have to tell you that I'm amazed at their work and the work of others like them. To be there in the midst of pain, to see those tears of pain of those that have gone through a disaster, and yet to know that they are there to help, to bring a different kind of tears, tears of hope and joy. As I've been watching the coverage about Hurricane Sandy this week, I've been thinking about All Saints' Day. A day of pain, a day of hope, and a day of joy, all wrapped up into one. First, the pain. In just a few minutes, we will be giving God thanks for those who have died within our church family within the last year. It's one of these holy yet painful times when we think of our brothers and sisters who sat here in these pews with us, who labored with us in the name of Christ in the world, and yet they are no longer here with us. We mourn their loss. As their names are read, we might even shed tears. Or we might be thinking of others that we know and we love that have died within the last year. The tears of death are often tears of pain. Even when someone is suffering and there's a sense of relief that someone has died, it hurts to lose someone that we love. The funny thing, though, is that in the midst of our hurt, people expect things to get back to quote-unquote normal. If we're lucky, we get a few days of paid vacation from our jobs to bury a loved one, and then we're expected to be back in the saddle again, ready to go. But the reality is that after a loved one dies, things never really get back to normal again. I remember the first Christmas after one of my grandmothers died. I found myself missing, out of all things, her brown rice. In fact, I have to tell you, I still do. It was just right. It had a can of beef consomme in it, chopped onions in it, and it was baked in the oven so that when you walked into her house on Christmas or Thanksgiving Day, it smelled glorious in there. And I was bound and determined the first year after she died that we were going to have brown rice on Christmas Day. And while I used my grandmother's recipe, I have to tell you, it wasn't the same. Christmas Thanksgiving, birthdays, other special days will never be the same for me again because she's not there. I think about the empty chair that's at the table, her chair, the chair that no one will ever sit in. And I think of the unspoken grief that we all have and we all feel. Death does all this. The pain, tears, and absence are real. And today is a day to remember all this. Death stinks. And yet, the pain and sting of death is not the final word. The Bible does not end on a note of pain. It ends on a note of hope and joy. John the Revelator, John the Seer, is given a vision of the new world where all things will be made new. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more. For the first things have passed away, he declares. One day, passing away will pass away. It will go the way of the dinosaur and the dodo bird. The tears of pain will go away, and all will be made new. And what may be shocking for some of us to hear, the reason for this is not just because we get to go to God. In fact, John ends the book of Revelation by saying it's not so much that we get to go to God, it's that God comes to us. The Bible ends with salvation coming down from heaven to earth. The final scenes are not about us leaving to go to God. I saw a new Jerusalem coming down from heaven, John says. In the end, God chooses to make his home among us, in the place where we live. And as that happens, God will wipe away every tear. Not just the tears that remain after the second coming of Christ, but every tear that ever has been will be wiped away. God will bring about the day when all things will be made new, and this is where our hope and our joy lies, which is the other half of All Saints Sunday. Yes, we grieve those who have died within the last year, but we do it with hope, knowing that the promise of God to be with his people has come into play right here and right now. Because as much as we remember those who have died and who are now in the care of Jesus, in a few minutes we will also read the names of those who have been baptized in this place in the last year. Baptism is a breaking in of what is promised in the book of Revelation, that God would be present with us and making all things new. Each time someone is baptized, our church is made new. That is part of our joy as God's people, that God would continue to grow and refresh the church through the baptized, and that more and more people would share in the mission of Christ. Yes, we look back on All Saints' Day, and we give God thanks for those who are now at rest from their labors. But the truth of this day is that all God's saints are not dead. The church has never taught that the saints are dead people alone. Living people are also saints who have been unbound and set free by Christ in the waters of baptisms. Saints are living, dead, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, tall, short, fat, rich, American, Iraqi, Catholic, Baptist, Episcopalian, Methodist, and yes, even Lutherans who have been transformed by God to do all sorts of things. And the good news is that God continues to do this among all the baptized people of God. God does this in our daily lives, in the places where we are, in places like our work, our homes, schools, and play. And in those very places, God chooses to transform us and to make us new into living saints. What we remember on this All Saints' Day is that God is the actor and the author of all this. The one who brings death to an end is himself the end, the beginning of all things, from Alpha to Omega, from A to Z is God. God will not just be an item, one of many things to pick in the heavenly smorgasbord. God will be in the new reality of heaven coming to earth that embraces all things. So just as God is in the beginning, so too shall he be at the end. Amen.